Good afternoon. It's Monday, the 27th of October 2014, just after 1 o'clock. Welcome to UK Column News. I'm your host, Brian Gerrish. With me in the studio, Mike Robinson.
Good afternoon.
We're having a few problems with colour today, so if you're worried about the colour of my shirt, this is a computer error. It's nothing to do with the actual colour. Will that do?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the weather is changeable across the country. Some people are alleging it is sunny in London and Surrey. It's not too bad in Wales. It's miserable, though, in Pembrokeshire. So probably much the same further north, Scotland. We don't have any reports today. Well, what's happening in the news? I think we'll kick off with this one here, which is essentially a pensioner spends 6 months facing racism charges after joking that he wasn't a Muslim when he was asked to take off his shoes at Stansted Airport. So this brought in some very aggressive police. He's questioned, taken off to a private room, questioned. They wait for him to return from holiday, and then all sorts of unpleasantness starts. And very interesting article, I think, this one, yeah. Mike. The bit we're particularly interested in is the fact, of course, who did this? Well, the police are part of the problem because they obviously picked up and thought they were going to score some points in their target system. But really, we have to pick up on the fact that it was the Crown Prosecution Service that put this man through 6 months of hell, basically, and uncertainty. And that would be the same Crown Prosecution Service that, of course, was hiding evidence exposing paedophile minister Cyril Smith. They're now accusing pensioners of racism. And, of course, they've been facilitating the imprisonment of abuse victim Melanie Shaw by accepting Nottingham police prosecution with no substantive evidence in court. So we say, how is this useless woman allowed to stay in her job? It's not the CPS that is at fault, of course, it's individuals. And Alison Saunders at the moment must be coming under the into the public spotlight.
Yeah.
She looks such a charming woman, doesn't she, when you look into those eyes? Well, what damage has she really been doing? Well, we're going to remind you that tomorrow is the trial for Melanie Shaw. Nottingham Crown Court. This was Melanie before 3 months in profit-making Sodexo prison, Peterborough. This is Melanie when she was collected from Peterborough prison. Clearly she's enjoyed the quality of life services that only Sodexo can produce. And we await with interest to see what is going to happen in Melanie's trial tomorrow. There's indications that the Crown Prosecution is now beginning to backtrack over allegations of arson. And of course, there's also been some backtracking over allegations of criminal damage, the throwing of paint. So if you can attend court tomorrow, Melanie, of course, will be very grateful of your support. And it's important in any case to see justice being done.
We should mention that you are actually going.
I will actually be attending tomorrow.
So there will be no news tomorrow?
Yes, quite right. Well, here we are. Good news.
Excellent news.
The war in Afghanistan is over. 13-year war. That may be significant for some people. The flag has been lowered in a moving ceremony at Camp Bastion. And, well, we're going to have a little discussion on what has been achieved. So this is a comment from the Telegraph article. There are concerns about the future security of the country when the 37 billion security operation comes to an end. The headline was a war, Mike. So it's interesting that once we get into the article, it's a mere £37 billion security operation, which has resulted in the deaths of 800 members of the Afghan security forces just this summer in Helmand.
Yeah, but let's not also forget 453 British servicemen and 7,000 injured.
Absolutely. And 4,000 Afghani forces killed this year alone. Yeah. So we're just bringing this comment from the senior British officer, Brigadier Thompson. He said he's optimistic about this country. What we achieved is something that we can be proud about. The people voted and the Taliban have been marginalised. There's never an easy time to leave a country when you've been building an institution. This is a country that is a work in progress rather than a country that's been completed. Now, in no way are we undermining the sacrifices and hard work that's been put in by British Armed Forces, but you have to look with astonishment at that senior officer's comments. Does he really believe the rhetoric which he's put on paper there?
Well, indeed, and we have been warning for many years about what's actually been going on in Afghanistan, because effectively those people, those British servicemen that have made a sacrifice, have made a sacrifice on the basis of a lie. Well, in 2010, we were pointing out that Afghani MPs were warning that British military personnel were involved in protecting the opium trade in Afghanistan. In fact, she was alleging that foreign forces present in Afghanistan were involved in the cultivation, production and trafficking of drugs. And so there's pretty strong words from her. So we were also pointing out that only 185 tons of opium were produced while the Taliban were in charge in 2001. But as soon as we went back in there with our military, of course, drug production surged to 3,400 tons annually. And it has only the situation has only got worse since. And we have highlighted this in recent weeks where, in fact, any kind of eradication program is just totally pointless. And so, of course, we were also pointing out that Britain's troops had been forced by Britain's politicians effectively into the role of guardians of opium production. British troops were deployed in Helmand mainly, as we know, and it was in Helmand that the real increase of opium production took place. As I say, in 2004-2005, there were 72,000 acres of fields cultivating opium, and by 2008 that had risen to 250,000 acres, and it has risen every year since. And then in December 2010, WikiLeaks published a memo from the US government, the US Office of Drug Control Policy, and it was written by John Walters. It was actually written in 2007. He said that his memo was not to be seen by foreigners. It said ONDCP Director Walters met with COM-ISAF General McNeil in Kabul, and separately with RC South Commander Major General Van Loon, who's Dutch, in Kandahar. McNeil told Walters that there had been a lot of action on counter-narcotics, but little progress. He was particularly dismayed by the British effort. They had made a mess of things in Helmand, he was saying. Their tactics were wrong, and the deal that London cut on Musa Kala had failed. That agreement opened the door to narco-traffickers in the area, and now it's impossible to tell the difference between traffickers and the insurgents. Now, the Musa Kala deal that was mentioned in the memo was an agreement with the Taliban that British troops should pull out of key drug trafficking area of Musa Kala in Helmand. In return, the Taliban agreed not to attack international security assistance force troops in the region, but the result was that the drug traffickers had free rein to do as they wished. And then in an interview, a very interesting interview with the Australian magazine Profil on the 27th of January 2009, Antonio Maria Costa, who was until that point Executive Director of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, said, in many cases, drug money is currently the only liquid investment capital to buy real estate. For example, in the second half of 2008, liquidity was the biggest problem the banking system had, and therefore the liquid capital of drug flows became an important factor. And this is exactly the point that we've been making, that the drug money, as a result of what's been going on in Afghanistan, is what has been keeping the financial system afloat. And he went on to say, with the banking crisis choking lending, these cash-rich criminal groups have emerged as the only source of credit. And that's basically what has come out of, how many billions did you say? 37 billion?
39 billion in, but we've got a lot of drug money coming out. So I think the whole Afghanistan operation clearly a success for the City of London.
For the City of London. And we've just, as a final point in this, keep in mind for anybody that's... it's okay, Nick. Just keep in mind for anybody that's in any way sceptical about this drug money business, that the NHS is so short of opiates that we're now growing opium in fields in the UK, and yet we've just withdrawn from Afghanistan, where there's more opium available than anywhere else on this planet. So if we were there for genuine reasons, why are we not simply buying opiates from Afghanistan for the NHS instead of promoting heroin production?
Yeah. Well, I think we know the answer to that one.
Yeah.
The aim is the drug money for the City of London. But of course, it's not working in the country, is it?
Well, in fact, I should have been changing these slides. So we'll
just bring a few in. It's okay.
Just move on.
All right.
So I'm done. If you want to.
Okay, we're there. All right. Well, we did this summary a little while ago, but we'll bring it back on screen because we think it still works. But what were these wars all about? It doesn't matter whether it's Afghanistan or it's Libya. The government, British government, creating unlawful wars using propaganda and lies. And this is what's happened. We're killing people. We're forcing the troops to work alongside people who are killing them. You're restricting the forces with rules of engagement that prevents them working properly. They're never going to secure the areas of ground. We are promoting the poppy crops. And then what's the next thing going on? We've been getting rid of professional troops. They're being made redundant whilst we recruit more and more youngsters. We're replacing the UK military hospital infrastructure with unaccountable charities. We're offering troops counselling and preventative psychotropic drugs, which is leaving the troops to rot on the streets. And our key point there is that, of course, the moment it comes to photograph opportunities at the cenotaph, there they all are. We regard these people as dangerous, very low empathy hypocrites. And of course, they're not out to build any overseas nation states. Their job is to destroy them and make as much money out of it as possible.
Indeed.
But we certainly know that the Conservatives are beginning to worry about the election because here we are, more disgusting photo opportunities by David Cameron, who's now been giving veterans of the Falklands medals after 32 years. Now, these medals, we can say, deserved by the people concerned because of the dangerous work they did clearing munitions and some particularly unpleasant work in clearing bodies and the dead. But this is really David Cameron using the work of these very brave individuals simply as a electioneering campaign. It's unbelievable hypocrisy. Yeah.
Right, so
America.
This is Brazil, actually. So Brazil has just had their election for president, and Dilma Rousseff has defeated her main antagonist, I suppose. I'm not really sure how to pronounce her name, so I do apologise if I get this wrong, but I think it's Aécio Neves. And she won 51.6% of the vote, and Aécio Neves won 48.4%. So it was pretty close to call. Now, I wanted to highlight the Economist article here because really, the Economist, being the mouthpiece of the City of London, really pretty upset by this result because, of course, Rousseff absolutely 100% behind the BRICS initiative and against the Western banking system. Whereas Neves was pro-markets, and the Economist here pointing out they're suggesting a riven country. They're really highlighting the opportunity for the Western financial system to get in there with a bit of a sort of coloured revolution type situation. Potentially it could happen in the near future as they try to, because this election was so close. Clearly there is support for the Western financial system and the market, so they're hoping to maybe get a bit of angst going on among the population there. They really are panicking about the BRICS initiative, and so they want to deal with it, and they dealt with it, or they attempted to deal with it in many ways. First of all, they ran the World Wildlife Fund friend and supporter Marina Silva. She fell out of the election at the first hurdle. They've now lost this election, and so they're going to try and push the what they're calling the Kashmir revolutionaries in Sao Paulo, and try to blow the country up from the inside. That's what they usually do, isn't it? But the BRICS, a very positive development for Brazil, so we'll see what happens with that.
Okay.
But in the meantime, the European Central Bank has released its stress test of the European banks. Well, you would think that it's really great news because most European banks have passed the stress test. That's great news, isn't it? 130 Eurozone banks given this stress test, and all but 25 of them failed. Sorry, all but 25 of them passed. So 25 failed their stress test. They did not have sufficient capital. Now, they, according to the FT here, they said that they blamed poor valuation of commercial loans for some of the failures and some of the potential. Well, what they're saying here that banks overvalued assets, and they're saying that the valuation of commercial loans was the problem here. But Philippe Legrand, who's an economist and former advisor to the, well, he was then the European Commission President, Barroso, he described the test as a whitewash, which is a pretty accurate assessment. And he said, according to the FT here, that the ECB singles out less important banks in less important countries and gives the German banks a clean bill of health. So how did they do this? Well, here's the press release. Well, basically, they did this by completely ignoring bonds and derivatives, and particularly ignoring derivatives. And as a result of excluding high-risk investments, especially derivatives, they are promoting the sort of investment banks as opposed to the high street banks. Well, they say all's well because only 25 banks are failing the test. But of course, if you don't actually count most of the risk, then the rest are bound to pass, aren't they?
Well, you can fiddle it as you like. And the thing I like about this whole business is, of course, the European Union hasn't had any audited, signed-off accounts. I think it's for 18 years. And we've got Cameron and George Osborne expressing surprise that all of a sudden they've got a bill for an extra 1.9 billion euros, was it, or thereabouts. Can't understand where this has come from. Well, maybe you should try checking the fact that the European Union hasn't got any signed off audited accounts. So we're donating British taxpayers' money into a fraudulent organisation, the European Union. That must mean that Mr. Cameron and Osborne's are committing criminal offences, I would have thought.
You would think.
Yeah, well, call the police is probably the answer to that, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. Well, moving on, I mean, this is a spectacularly disgusting story, and really it comes to the heart of this so-called use of the word independence. Of course, police and crime commissioners are supposed to be independent, and they're supposed to be acting as a watchdog for chief constables and the activities of the police. But this is Police and Crime Commissioner for Avon and Somerset, Sue Mount-Stevens, who has apologised after telling the Chief Constable, Nick Gargan, the name of a whistleblower that had complained about him. Now, what has actually happened here is that there were complaints made about, we'll come on to that in a second. She suspended the Chief Constable, as she has the power to do, being independent, in inverted commas, Mr. Gargan. She suspended him on full pay of about £150,000 a year, and that came only just over a year after she appointed him in the first place. Now, he is alleged to have abused his position by making, quotes, inappropriate advances towards more junior staff, female staff within the force. And the complaints were made by 2 members of staff, but it's not, according to this report, it has not been revealed how many women in total have been caused problems by Mr. Garman. The IPCC has finished its investigation, and they've sent a report to Sue Mount-Stevens, and she's got to decide now whether there's a case to answer for either misconduct or gross misconduct. Now, during the investigation, the IPCC also discovered that Mr. Garman's computer, that there was information on that computer which may have put him in breach of the Data Protection Act, because he was apparently sending emails to third parties not on the police force, including personal information. So that's another investigation that's going on. And as I say, she has apologised to one of the women who made a complaint against the Chief Constable, because she allegedly, well, she did, it's not alleged because she's admitted it, she let this lady's name slip during a conversation with the Chief Constable. So I just thought I would read what she said about this because it's worth listening to. So in May 2014, I was made aware by a member of my team that someone had approached them and made a verbal complaint against Chief Constable Nick Gargan. During a subsequent conversation with Mr. Gargan, I was discussing a concern I had around how that individual was coping generally, and I mentioned that a complaint had been made against him by that person. At the time of the conversation, I was not aware of the full facts, which became apparent subsequently during the detail of the allegations being made and the request for whistleblower status. As soon as I became aware of the seriousness of the allegations, I initiated the investigation process by voluntarily referring the matter to the IPCC and including details of my conversation with Mr. Gargan. A complaint about the disclosure of the name was subsequently made to the police and crime panel, who looked into the matter and found I had made a mistake. A mistake? Yes. I agreed with their finding, and I have already written to the individual concerned to apologise for the distress I caused. I firmly believe that everyone in public office needs to be held to the same high standard of conduct, which is why I told the IPCC of my conversation before their investigation began. I have cooperated fully with the police and crime panel's investigation process. This was a new situation for me, and while I could have handled it better, I've learned from it, and employees within the constabulary can feel confident. She's common purpose, isn't she?
Well, as you're reading this, Mike, my mind is saying, well, here it is. I've made a mistake, but let's not worry about the damage for that. Let's move on, and let's move on to better things. I would say this is a lady who's undergone some form of common purpose training.
So what do you think, Brian? Because I mean, it seems to me that if you're in a position of being an independent police and crime commissioner, and somebody comes to you with a complaint about the chief constable, the last thing you do, whether you know that this person is going for whistleblower status or not, the last thing you do is to go straight to the chief constable and tell them who it is that's made a complaint.
Yeah, it's not a slip, is it?
No.
You don't make a slip with that sort of thing because it will automatically be right at the forefront of your mind that this is a person who's a whistleblower, so you're not going to make a slip. So this is probably a deliberate release of the name.
Yes.
Well, it tells us that we've got a really insidious situation now. We've got massive fraud and corruption inside our police forces. And of course, the good men and women in the police find it very difficult to counter this because senior officers are implicated. And now we've got another layer of largely unaccountable police and crime commissioners who are either incompetent or they're not independent. And in any case, they're being supported by the Independent Police Complaints Commission, which nobody regards as being independent. Well, wait for the next step coming in, and thanks very much. Have you finished that?
Yes,
okay, right.
Yeah.
We'll just make sure we get it right today. So the next thing we're going to say is going to come in unless we stop it. Have a look at this. This was sent in to us by a viewer who had been asked to fill in a form from Disclosure Scotland. And the form was asking for a full disclosure of background history, court cases, convictions, etc. Well, interestingly, we'd been doing a little bit of work into this investigation into this organisation a few weeks ago, so this was very timely. Here it is, Disclosure Scotland. It tells you very clearly it's an executive agency of the Scottish Government, and it operates on behalf of Scottish ministers. But this body is being used to essentially carry out background checks on people throughout the rest of UK, England and Wales. They're not messing around. Have a look at what they say is a disclosure, the sorts of information that they are going to delve into: unspent convictions, spent convictions, cautions, membership, etc. And all this is going back north of the border. So let us remember that this brings all of this information back under control of Scottish law. And we know that law in Scotland is simply governed by Alex Salmon, Kenny McCaskill, and Police Scotland Chief House, Stephen House. So what is the relationship with England? Well, from a phone call this morning, we've been told that although Disclosure was working with the justice system in Scotland, a little bit of an oxymoron, but we'll run with that, it's now been passed to the Department for Children and Families. So Disclosure Scotland works with ministers from children and families, so this is bringing it into social work arena, but they have a memorandum of understanding with the Home Office, which apparently regulates their conduct within England. So I gently asked if we could have a copy of the memorandum of understanding, and I was told by a very polite gentleman that this wasn't possible because that memorandum of understanding was simply for business between government departments. So if you are a member of the public that's received communication from Disclosure Scotland, we think you should be very concerned about where your information is going and indeed what law it's going to be dealt with, because as we know from Robert Greene, if it's going to be dealt with by Scottish law, anything could happen, from information being lost, disclosed, or possibly there could be false accusations based on the information that you reveal.
So a memorandum of understanding?
Yes.
What type of legislation is that?
I don't know. It could be the same as the same sort of idea of the memorandum of understanding between
Cafcass and
Cafcass and the police. And the Family Law Division, or indeed the police and the Law Society. So we will look into that further. If you're north of the border, perhaps you'd give us some help and have a look at the ministers behind Disclosure Scotland. Well, south of the border, it gets even muckier because this was pointed out to us. Big Voice London, which claims to be an independent youth project supported by none other than the UK Supreme Court. And this very, very strange organisation appears to be young law students who believe that they are chosen as great forthcoming leaders, and they are going to provide education and understanding for young people throughout the country as to how the UK Supreme Court works. But it is independent, the Supreme Court, as we will see. Well, here we are, sponsorship and support. We've got some pretty big companies there, Landmark Chambers, the City Law School, that's the City University, I think, is involved with that. Middle Temple, always good people to have on your side. And at the bottom, in little small letters, you will actually see that sponsorship and support comes from the UK Supreme Court. But the website's obviously been written by law students, because they tell you very clearly that although they receive sponsorship and support from the UK Supreme Court, they are independent. It's pretty clear, isn't it, really? Yeah. So here's some of the young people. I'd encourage you to go and have a look at their pages and read about them. It's all it's sort of Facebookish. These are supposedly smart young people. They've got lots of tremendous interests, but these are clearly going to be the leaders in law. What is this? Part of big society, do you think?
I think it's much worse than that. This is removal of constitutional protections and making sure that the next generation of legal professionals all understand the new way of doing things.
Yeah. So reframing, grooming of young law students and spreading that out in a wider thing. Well, we will be asking that particular organisation how they justify their independence, and we look forward to that response. Maybe this man's got it right. From the Independent, Tesla boss Elon Musk has been warning that artificial intelligence development is summoning the demon. And I think there's some very interesting language here. I think we should be very, very careful about artificial intelligence. If I were to guess, like what our biggest
we're having a problem
today. Yeah, we are having a problem today.
Existential.
Thank you very much. My threat is it's probably that. Been all right if we'd had a glass of wine or something, but we haven't. With artificial intelligence, we are summoning the demon. In all those stories where there's the guy with the pentagram and the holy water, it's like, yeah, he's sure he can control the demon, but it didn't work out like that. So very, very interesting language from this man. But I think there are many other people out there who would say, is it the intelligence, the artificial intelligence, or is the demon in the people developing the artificial intelligence?
No idea.
We could have a discussion on that.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to need the church to sort out the demons, so it's probably appropriate that Justin Welby has been admitting that child abuse has been rampant within the Church of England. And the Archbishop of Canterbury there describing the Church's failure to face misdeeds as inexcusable. So child abuse is a little bit of a naughty misdeed. This is what he actually said: the betrayal of Christ in such behaviour is complete. He's talking about child abuse. We've got a question: is this statement a statement of regret at betrayal of the Church? Or is it a statement that the abuse of children is the ultimate satanic act whereby the betrayal of Christ is complete? It almost is as if this man is making a congratulatory statement that if you abuse children, that's the ultimate betrayal of Christ. So I'm going to ask this question: is Mr. Welby a Christian? And of course, previous heads of the Church of England have been Christians and Druids, which leads us with some interesting questions. Child abuse must be Fiona Woolf then.
Poor old Fiona Woolf, still under pressure. She's going to face a second grilling, according to the Telegraph, from MPs over links to Leon Britton. I'm not going to bother with this article. It's just more of the same dross. And at the end of the day, what they are trying to do is to make sure that this inquiry never gets started. And they're going to do that by putting people in at the top who are just unacceptable to anybody with any common sense. And they're going to continue grilling this and future heads of this inquiry until people forget that the inquiry is even there. And I'm just going to use this opportunity once again to say what we need in this country is the return of grand juries. Forget about this judge-led. There is no independence in any of these people that are being chosen to lead these inquiries. There was no independence with Leveson. There'll be no independence with this. No independence with Butler Sloss. There'll be no independence with Wolf. So we've got to stop this nonsense and return to the idea of having grand juries, 25 people with investigatory powers. And this process worked for hundreds of years. It can work again. And it was only a matter of convenience that they removed them at the time of the First and Second World War, when they felt that people were better off going off to die in Europe than to sit on grand juries in this country. So there's no real reason. It's still law. There's no reason why they couldn't be a new grand jury couldn't be initiated today to deal with this issue. But the fact of the matter is that unfortunately Cameron, Clegg and the rest do not want this inquiry to get started, and they're going to continue to faff around with this nonsense about various heads of the inquiry until when? Forever.
Forever, if they can do it. Nick, if you just pop that slide back up on the screen, I just wanted to comment on the lovely dress and regalia that Fiona Woolf is wearing there. Remember, of course, this woman says she's not establishment. She's just a totally ordinary person, just like one of us. Well, of course, the man who assists her in that sort of gear, and apparently goes shopping as well to make sure that she's bought the right stuff, is her steward. That's the name apparently in the City of London for a butler, but the Lord Mayor's steward, Colin Tucker. You can go to BBC London Digital there and have a listen to this little recording when he talks about looking after Fiona Woolf and the families, just like everybody else. Yes. So if you're having trouble with your butler at home, we get a few problems. They don't seem to do everything you require of them.
Indeed.
Constantly want more money. But if you are having trouble with your butler, get in touch with the UK column and we'll pass the message through to Colin Tucker for some advice. We can all become ordinary. Well, maybe there are one or two law firms that are beginning to see through the nonsense. We will say maybe they're not there for the money, because money being withdrawn from child abuse cases. But we've got Lee Day law firm here with Alison Miller, who's really saying it as it is. She's saying that Woolf is there simply chosen because the Home Office considers her to be a safe pair of hands. So if you read this Guardian article, you'll see this lady is saying that this is a complete farce in the inquiry, and she calls them the abuse survivors that she's dealing with, are all saying that this is a complete cover-up. Well, we also reported this on the 23rd. We pointed out that sitting on Fiona Woolf's panel was .com Children's Foundation, and we highlighted that, of course, Mr. Tony Blair was involved. We also said that here they are promoting role models for very young children. Just highlight Tony for you there. So we broke the news that this very interesting charity had been pulled in by the Home Office and Fiona Woolf. And of course, the connection was not only through to Tony Blair, but his daughter Catherine Blair. So very interesting to see that the Mail on Sunday ran a major story featuring .com Children's Charity, and something really quite sinister here. They said that they had been warned off speaking to one of the other panel members, an abuse victim himself. They'd set up an interview, and suddenly they get a call from a Mr. James Saville, who says the interview's off, and if you mess us around, we're going to report you to IPSO. So I think it was a lady journalist from the Mail, absolutely warned off by a man, James Saville, who claimed that he was working for the Home Office. But when the Mail then contacted the Home Office, they said, no, this man is working for .com Children's Foundation. So we're already getting the mainstream press being warned off for digging too deeply into Fiona Woolf's transparent cover-up. We just give this man a mention. Sorry to bring him on screen. But this is an old article, but let's remind ourselves that David Cameron, he is part of the cabal organising this cover-up of child abuse by Westminster and the establishment. And yet here he was saying, well, trust servicemen children with me, we will look after them. Maybe
he's going to leave them in the pub or something.
Maybe he'll leave them in the pub. Yeah, it was his daughter, wasn't it? But social services never got involved with that. Can we trust Mr. Cameron? We don't think so, unless you need a good war overseas when unlimited money and ramp up the deaths, get the drugs in, and general trouble. We need a solution, don't we?
Yes, but before we mention the conference, just to say that the Crane Report tonight, 7:30, Ken O'Keefe is confirmed as Ian Crane's guest. Lots of people watching this probably know who Ken O'Keefe is, but he's an activist, former US Marine, now widely regarded as one of the most active and outspoken campaigners on behalf of Palestinian people, and he's raising awareness of the global corporate hegemony. He's returned from participating in the New Horizons conference in Tehran, and he's going to be sharing insights on the programme tonight. So join us at 7:30, and of course we'll have Fracking Nightmare on at 9 o'clock as usual. Let's not forget the conference on Saturday. Starts, basically doors will open, I suppose, at sometime after 9 in the morning. We're aiming to start for 10. We'll have speakers speaking until 6 p.m. on the Saturday. Same sort of situation on the Sunday, and then after dinner on Saturday and Sunday nights, Alex G will have 2 special editions of Doomwatch, which will be broadcast on the UK column. I think it'll happen on ukcolumn.org/live, but I'll have a thing on the front page to let you know when that is, and I believe that starts at 7:30 on Saturday and Sunday night. And so there's other stuff going on in the evenings as well. So really a packed day on both days. The second day, of course, the health conference. Details at doomwatch.biz. And if you're a BCG member, on the BCG website as well.
Excellent. Before we depart, just a quick request, really. Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks. Thank you to all the people who've sent in information concerning the police media guru, Mr. Matt Tapp. Some very interesting information coming in. But we're very puzzled at the moment. This man that the police have used across the country to deal with all of the major child abuse investigations, it doesn't matter whether it's Jersey or Soham Operation Daybreak around the abuses Beechwood home. That's, of course, Melanie Shaw. Mr. Matt Tapp has been moving around each of the police districts on what appear to be substantial contracts, including the Met Police, and he is controlling the media output in relation to these cases. But we were told that he had moved from Leicestershire Police back to take control of Operation Daybreak. But when we spoke to both Nottinghamshire Police and Leicestershire Police at the end of last week, they both appeared confused as to whether he was or was not working for them. So we'd be grateful for any help anybody can give us to establish just which of Britain's police forces is now employing Mr. Matt Tapp. And we'd also like to know if he is being used as the media spokesperson for Operation Daybreak under Nottinghamshire Police. Very intriguing situation, Mike, that you have a man who's appointed to deal not only with the media but also with the wider general public over matters to do with child abuse cases. And when you speak to the police, they seem to get rather reserved.
Not really sure whether he works for them or not.
Okay, so we'd be grateful for any help. Of course, any investigations you carry out, please be polite and professional as always. Well, there we are, a little bit of a staccato show today. I think it was due to the glare of my shirt. I'll deal with that in future. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back same time tomorrow.
No, we won't.
No, we won't. We will be back on Wednesday. Carry on as you begin, I suppose. And if anybody's in the Nottingham area and you can get to court for Melanie Shaw, please be there. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.